Madden 21 TFL Division Reveal. I am Bon here with Brian. Say hey to everybody.
How's it going, guys?
We have no Cooley tonight. His wife isn't letting him participate. He can't play. But we do have Double D in with us as well. So Double D is going to be one of the members that we are revealing tonight. Double D, how you doing, bud? Oh, he might have stepped away, but he's here. So we'll reveal his team here in a little bit. Oh yeah, he just left. Might be having some mic issues. All right, so let's get to it. Brian, I will kick it to you, and we will reveal our first team of the night.
Okay, everyone. So we are going to be revealing another AFC division. If you haven't noticed the pattern, we're going back and forth between NFC and AFC. And tonight we're doing the AFC East. And we're going to start off with probably the worst kept secret of this entire team reveal, and that is Bond's team. We're going to be taking over to no surprise the Miami Dolphins because of Tua and his love affair with lefty quarterbacks. So, Bond last cycle was probably one of, I think, his most successful cycles since I've joined. 57, 54, and 1, 3 winning seasons. Uh, I think that all of his winning seasons came in play seasons, as I know his sim seasons were kind of lackluster. He was 0-3 in the playoffs, didn't get a playoff win. So he'll look to change that this year with the Dolphins. So, let's hear a little bit about your team that you've been pitching for now for the past 3 months.
Yeah, since the draft, I like you said, it was not a very well kept secret. Everyone knew that wherever Tua went, that was going to be my team. I am in love with him. He is my favorite Alabama player of all time, soon to be my favorite NFL player of all time. So I am taking the Miami Dolphins. Just start right at the top of the list. Probably the biggest free agent signing in the offseason in the NFL, Byron Jones. They give him a huge contract to pair up with Xavier Howard, who they gave a huge contract the previous year in an extension. So Byron Jones is 88 overall, Xavier Howard 82 overall. Kyle Van Noy, who signed from New England to go play for his former coordinator Brian Flores, 86 overall. Devontae Parker, the top-rated offensive player at 84 overall, the only 80 plus overall player on offense for the Dolphins. Free agent signing Jordan Howard, trade for Matt Breida, both 79 overall halfbacks. Mike Gesicki, 79 overall tight end. So it's an interesting roster. Not a lot of top end talent, but looks to be some decent depth at least. I know when the team ratings came out, the Dolphins, I believe, had the worst team overall in the game. 32 out of 32 teams. So definitely in a rebuild mode. Obviously, we all know that with the gutting they did of their team last year, getting the first round pick for Minka Fitzpatrick, 2 firsts for Laramie Tunsil, excuse me, and they made those pay off. So drafted Tua at number 5 overall, who was horrifically underrated in this opening launch ratings, only 73 overall, only 88 throw power, which is a joke. But that's okay. I'll make do. And who else did they? I don't even know who else they took. It didn't really matter after that. They got Noah Igbenogany, cornerback from Auburn. I don't know. They took some other people. They took an offensive lineman. Doesn't really matter. Tua is going to lead us to the promised land.
Yep.
So that's pretty much it. I took the Dolphins because of Tua. I've always been a fan. I love the Dolphins uniform combination. They went kind of with their original style a couple years ago. Really simple. I think they've got some of the best uniforms in the game. Um, it'll be an interesting departure. I've been the Panthers every cycle except the first when I was the Seahawks. So I've always been in the NFC. I have not had an AFC team since the OS Vets League way back when I was the Bills. So this will be an interesting change for me. A brand new division, a lot of guys that I've not played against a lot. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yes, so it's interesting, kind of talking about the Panthers. You've always had Cam Newton, it seemed like, for almost entire cycle.
Oh, are you still there?
Running quarterback
Okay.
and trying to use Cam to his full ability. but you seem to actually have the most success from a win-loss standpoint last cycle. Once you kind of went to that aired out offense with Houston Follett, damn you for getting him. And do you think you're going to continue that here with Tua and just going for more of that passing offense that you've had so much success with and won a lot of games with at the end of the last cycle?
Yeah, I've always been really terrible at running the ball. Cam was my saving grace for having any kind of decent rushing stats because I was able to run the option with him pretty well. If I don't have him, I don't even bother really to try to run the ball because I can't do it. So Tua, Tua's an underrated athlete. I'll pull up his attributes again. I think he's 83 speed, 81 speed, 85 acceleration. So it's not like he's a statue, but certainly the read option and those variations are not going to be a big part of my playbook like they would have been had I had Cam again or a running quarterback like Cam. Um, yeah, I don't know. I just got tired of running for 65 yards a game and then throwing for 120 and not scoring. So I decided to just open it up, throw a bunch of touchdowns, throw for a bunch of yards, and just deal with throwing for a bunch of picks as well. So it's going to be Tua's team. I know Jordan Howard and Matt Breida are pretty well rated, but it really doesn't matter. I had Christian McCaffrey and I traded him 2 year in the second year because I couldn't run with him. So I'm just going to go ahead and assume I'm not going to be able to run the ball and I'm going to sling it around.
And other than Tua, what other player might you be most excited about on this roster?
Oh man, that's a really good question. I don't even know. There's not a lot. I like the cornerback tandem of Byron Jones and Xavier Howard, even though I'm not going to use those guys. Obviously, I don't even know. I'm a safety user, so they've got Eric Rowe at strong safety. Let's see who their. I don't even know who their free safety is. Um, Looks like Brandon Jones is their highest rated free safety, whoever that is. So the defense doesn't have anyone that sticks out as like an unbelievable player. That's probably going to be my main area of focus in upgrading the roster. The defensive line looks okay. The linebackers are average. Raekwon McMillan and Shaq Lawson, Jerome Baker. I don't know, man. Outside of Tua, there's not a lot to be excited about in the corner tandem. I mean, you have top end corners. Hopefully that shuts down the opposing team's pass game without having to blitz too much. And I don't like blitzing a lot. I like playing seven guys in coverage and rushing the four down linemen. So that this team seems to maybe stack up pretty well with that. So we'll see. There's no one that I really that I think is going to be outstanding outside of Tua. I don't throw to the tight end a lot, so Gesicki, I'm probably going to horribly underutilize him and let him go in free agency whenever his rookie contract is up. But we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a little bit of a rebuild, for you here. Like you said, not a lot of high-rated players from the start, but have the opportunity to build what you want there with a quarterback from the start and a quarterback that that you're going to enjoy using. So,
well, and I always seem to struggle. I always seem.
Challenge.
Oh yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
I was just gonna say, it's going to be an exciting challenge.
Yeah. Well, and I seem to struggle a lot early on in cycles as I try to figure out the gameplay and how my offense is going to work. So now at least I have a built-in excuse where this team is pretty terrible to start, and I can kind of build the offense as I figure or build the team as I figure out how I'm going to play and what's going to be successful for me. So I'm sure I'll take a couple of lumps the first two seasons as I usually do, and then take that sim season and I've got the extra first round pick from the Tunsil trade, so I'll have two first rounders right off the bat. I should anyway, and hopefully move some guys around and maybe acquire an extra first round pick in those first three seasons, and hopefully after the sim season I'll be able to start competing. That's my goal anyway.
Sounds good.
All right. So we'll wrap up.
Okay.
Dolphins, I'm taking over, taking my talents to Miami, as LeBron would say. So we will go to our next team in the AFC East. And this is going to be, well, Brian, I'll let you introduce because I'm not sure exactly what the order is going to be.
Yeah, so going to actually introduce a brand new owner to the league. He was not in the league last year, um, and that is Double D. Uh, he um, he was one of the guys, one of the few people who didn't get one of their top three team choices. Uh, he, being the new guy to the league, some of his team choices went to some of our like long-standing members, and he was kind enough to be open and taking a team that wasn't on anyone's list this year, and he's going to be getting the New England Patriots. So Bond's old favorite player, Cam Newton, is now going to be in his division and is going to be quarterback by Double D. So Bond, let's hear a little bit about this Patriots team.
All right. Obviously the big news from the Patriots, the departure of both Rob Gronkowski, who I guess left a couple years ago, but Tom Brady is gone. So insert Cam Newton, my former quarterback, who again is severely underrated in this roster, only 78 overall. Can still run around a little bit. The throw power down to 91 from his injuries. But this team is set up still to win. The defense is loaded. Stephon Gilmore at 99 overall corner, Devin McCourty at 92 overall safety, Jason McCourty an 85 overall corner, Jonathan Jones an 83 overall corner, Patrick Chung 83 overall strong safety. So the defensive backfield is loaded. Dante Hightower, who's opting out in real life, but I'm pretty sure Madden's not going to have that. So he will be anchoring the middle of the defense at middle linebacker. They did lose Kyle Van Noy, who was their top pass rusher. But this is kind of what the Patriots do. They let guys go and don't pay them, and then they have somebody come in. And they drafted who did they got Chase Winovich from Michigan, which Brian you know a lot about. I think they got him in the second round, which was a steal because he was one of the top pass rushers in college football last year. But obviously N'Keal Harry's still there, first round pick from 2 years ago. So there's a lot of it's an aging roster. It's a little bit of an older roster. But there's still a lot of really good players on this team. Again, led by those top end guys: Stephon Gilmore, Devin McCourty, Dante Hightower on the defensive end, Julian Edelman, the top offensive player at 87 overall, Shaq Mason 86 overall. Offensive line is really strong. Shaq Mason, Joe Thuney, David Andrews in the middle of that offensive line, and Isaiah Wynn on the tackle, who missed all of last year. It was their first round pick, another first round pick, missed all of last year with I think a knee injury. But he's 79 overall left tackle. So offensive line's in good shape. Not a ton of weapons for Cam Newton on offense, but Cam is always so much fun to use her in Madden with his running ability. So I'm sure that'll be a lot of fun for Double D. What do you think, Double D? Welcome to the show. What do you think about your team selection? How do you feel about the Patriots?
I like it. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
I've been playing with the Chargers in the summer league, and their leading wide receiver is twin Tim Dwight, and he's 64 overall. So the lack of talent doesn't really bother me.
There you
I
go.
never played with a moving quarterback before. I'm kind of like a pocket passer to stand back and chuck it. But so Cam Newton he'll be a little bit different for me. Uh, I do like the secondary. I think it's like one of the best in the league. The linebacking core is a little weak, and the defensive line needs some work. But I like they have a solid offensive line. Really, not much work needs to be done there. They have a right tackle. I think he's like maybe 32. He's getting up there in age, but their salaries are pretty low. So there's a lot to work with. And come time for the draft, I'm looking at drafting like wide receiver and running back and stuff like that. Really positions that you want to be drafting. So I'm actually pretty happy with it.
Yeah. The skill
Yeah,
positions are the
I mean,
fun drafting positions, the guys that you can put up some stats with early on.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
this team's interesting too because you're set to compete initially with that secondary, the offensive line. Having Cam, you can always win some games. But I feel like you're also set up to continuously build and rebuild that team while winning games. So I think that and that's always been kind of the Patriot way. So it'll be interesting to see as the cycle progresses and some of these guys start aging out, whether you're able to, keep the talent incoming.
Yeah, and I was looking at the secondary. there's actually, there's a ton of depth there too. So whenever I'm able to trade, that might be something that I look to move some of those pieces. I think I have four guys in the 80s. They just drafted a strong safety. So Chung, I know he's getting up there in age, but he's still like an 84 overall.
Yeah. The defense is it's aged a little bit. Again, I think Hightower is 30 now. Gilmore's in his 30s. They're all getting up to that age where they're going to start regressing in the game pretty quickly. But like you said, you might be able to move a piece. Stephon Gilmore, and we talked about this with Patrick Peterson with the Cardinals. Stephon Gilmore is always seems to be one of those guys every year that goes out on the trade block and somebody gets a first round pick or gives up a first round pick for him. So you'll definitely have some pieces that you'll be able to move for draft picks. If the first season or first couple seasons don't go as you hope, there's some pieces there that other guys will want for sure.
Yeah, and I think I have to see how this Madden plays out too. If from what I heard from the beta, a lot of the zones aren't really very good, so it might be beneficial just to keep my defensive backfield for the first year. But with the depth, definitely bring in some weapons for the offense.
So what's your
Yeah.
plan? What's your plan with the offense? Because you've got Sony Michel, you've got oh God, who's the other running back? James White, good pass catcher. Julian Edelman, is ageless it seems like, but outside of N'Keal Harry, there's not a lot of young talent on the offensive end. So is your focus going to be like, are you going to try to spend some money in free agency to shore that up? Are you focused with that on the draft? I know you mentioned probably looking at the draft for halfback wide receiver, but maybe trading for an established player. What do you think you might do?
I think, there's really not much talent at all. The tight end, I really have, I think the top tight end is a 66. One of my tight ends has a 29 overall. Um,
That's probably the
but
long
yeah,
snapper
so
guy. They always do that.
yeah, I do like the combination of White and Sony Michel, though. You have a receiving back and a pretty well-rounded halfback. But I'm definitely going to adjust the wide receiver position and the tight end position. I really don't have much choice.
Yeah.
And whether I do that in the draft or free agency, I guess I just have to see what's available. I have to see the draft class and see what free agents come available.
Yeah.
Yeah, so since you're new to the league and this is going to be first season, I know you've messaged me. We talked a little bit about like some of the unique things we do as the league. What's one thing that you see in our rules or how we do the off season or anything like that you're excited to see how it works out or you really like?
Well, I really like the no switch rule. I'm also playing in the deuce, and I have a tough time knowing when to switch and when not to switch. And with the TFL, it's easy; you just don't switch.
Yeah.
So I like that part of it. And then as far as off season rules, I think the contract thing, you don't sign your guys until like the re-signing period makes it interesting because then you don't really know who's going to be coming in for you until you see until you see it open up.
Yeah, I like how you describe the no switch. That's something that we have trouble with guys that come in is they hear no switch and they think no switch until the ball's caught, and that's a good way to put it. You just don't switch. You don't switch at all. So it should make it a lot easier.
Yeah, that's honestly the way I play against the computer because whenever I try to switch, I find that I make more mistakes anyway. So I just
Yeah,
usually just stick with one guy, and I play better that
awesome.
That's how I was too when I joined. What 6-7 years ago now. I'd always played computer, and I always made more mistakes by switching than I did by not. So that's how I just played the switch just for that reason alone. Just like you, and so it was an easy transition for me when I joined.
way. Yeah, definitely.
All right, Double D. Well, we definitely appreciate you coming on to talk about the Patriots a little bit. You're welcome to stay. We got two more teams to go through this division, so you're welcome to stay and react and talk about the teams with us if you'd like. If not, we appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
Well,
Yep.
we'll move on to the third team here then, and that is going to be the third user is going to be Captain Punishment. He's not with us here tonight. He comes over. He took over the Giants second or third to last season, last cycle. He came in with an 8-24 record. Obviously, he didn't have any winning seasons for playoff appearances. He came in on a very, very tough situation with that Giants team. They had lost Daniel Jones. They had lost a number of their key players, and in the previous offseason, the CPU really didn't do anything. So he kind of took probably one of the worst teams I've ever seen in our league over, and struggled to win. It was basically Saquon Barkley and no one else.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's going to be looking for a fresh start, starting off at the beginning of the cycle with his team. We'll be interested to see what he does. He's going to be taking over his favorite team, actually, the Buffalo Bills. So, Don, why don't we hear a little bit about this Bills team?
All right, the Buffalo Bills, long been one of the downtrodden teams since their 4 consecutive Super Bowl losses back in the 90s. I think, was it 2 years ago was their first playoff appearance since that 1993 or whatever it was. Or no, the Music City Miracle. That's right. That was their last playoff appearance. They really know how to lose in spectacular fashion. So the Bills have been a team that we usually have someone that is either a diehard fan that takes them over, or it's someone that, like with the Patriots, who no one picked and we have to give them to somebody. So it's nice that we have a guy that is a big fan of the Bills and is taking them over. So big acquisition of the offseason, the trade for Stephon Diggs. He immediately is their best player, 92 overall, which is a huge weapon for Josh Allen. They're strong on quarterback. Only 99 throw power in the game is Josh Allen. But this team is really built around their defense. Tre'Davious White, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, all really highly rated in the defensive backfield. We're seeing a theme through this division of really well-rated defensive backfields. I think every team so far has been essentially elite in the back end. But they combine that also with Jerry Hughes, a great pass rusher, Ed Oliver, who stormed onto the scene last year. He's an 81 overall, really good pass rusher at the defensive tackle position. Tremaine Edmonds, middle linebacker. Levi Wallace is another cornerback, highly rated, 78 overall. So it's a team that's built around the defense and a big arm quarterback who's an underrated athlete. 85 speed, 87 acceleration. So a guy that can move around if the play breaks down, and he's got some weapons. Cole Beasley. And the slot, one of the best slot receivers in the game. He's got John Brown with great speed on the outside. And obviously we talked about Stephon Diggs. So this is probably the highest rated roster in this division. Kind of right there with the Patriots. They're both really well rated. But that's your Bills. Again, a big talent influx and probably looking to compete right away in the AFC East.
Yeah, and I think you kind of alluded to it. They're the best rated team. I would say, just from a talent standpoint, they'd be the favorite in real life in the NFL for this division. So I think that having Josh Allen and that arm strength paired with John Brown, Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley in the slot. If Captain Punishment wants to, he can spread it around. He can sit back there and really try to go with an air attack, which is going to be key because, as you mentioned, this division is really secondary heavy. We haven't gotten to the Jets yet, but and so having a number of good wide receivers that you can spread it around depending on how you want to attack these good secondaries is going to be key. And the Bills, I think, are the only team in the division that has that talent.
Yeah, it's funny looking at this roster. I'm just kind of going through, and it's a pretty deep roster, but man, it is a who's who of Panthers castoffs. So let me just go through real quick. Teams that are guys that used to play in Carolina, because obviously they have, in real life, they have Brandon Beane, former Panther front office guy who's their GM, and then their coach, I can't think of his name, but former Panthers defensive coordinator. Yeah, Sean McDermott. So they've got Brian Cox Jr., former Carolina Panther. Let's see, Dean Marlowe, former Carolina Panther. Those are I'm kind of starting from the bottom and working my way up. Um, Star Latulele, former Carolina Panther, AJ Klein, uh, Isaiah McKenzie, Darrell Williams, Vernon Butler, and then on the first page, I think I saw a couple others. Josh Norman and Mario Addison. So this is where, when the Panthers are done with a player, they just go to Buffalo, apparently, and continue their career there. So I should be more familiar with this roster with as many former Panthers as there are on there, but I just don't care as much anymore.
Yeah, and that defense. I mean, you mentioned Josh Norman coming over there from Washington last
Yeah.
year, uh, and pair him with Tre'Davious White, and you mentioned the safeties in Hyde and uh, Poyer.
Yeah.
Um, and the thing is uh, two of those four guys are all really young, right?
Yeah.
Poyer and White, you're basically good for the cycle with those two young secondary guys. Whereas we're talking about the Patriots and some of the age that's going to hit that, or even the Dolphins with Jones and Howard. They're not necessarily old, but they're right in their prime, right at the beginning.
Yeah.
So I think the Bills secondary out of the three is the one set up best for the long term success. And you can kind of say the same about their offense too. I don't recall if you mentioned, but they got Devin Singletary at the running back position now with LaShawn McCoy leaving.
Yeah. I did not mention that.
So, and that and paired with Diggs and Allen, and obviously Allen still being on his rookie contract helps a lot. So
yeah, well, and
yeah,
the running threat that Josh Allen brings from the quarterback position too gives you a chance to be a little bit more a little more unique with the offense. And then, just kind of going through, they got Robert Foster, who I always forget, former Alabama alum, 94 speed at the wide receiver position. He's a Madden receiver. He doesn't produce a whole lot in real life, but his size speed combo is kind of set up perfectly for Madden. So he's another guy. I played captain a few times last cycle, and he's a really good player. Like you said, he got put in a horrible position with that team. I think he took over after free agency before the draft, so he couldn't do anything in free agency, and then he couldn't do anything in the draft because he didn't have anything scouted. So his first year was essentially a wash because he couldn't sign anyone, he couldn't build his roster, and I think by the third year, his last year, or the last year of the cycle, he was creeping up toward a 500 record with really a terrible team. So I think he's going to have a lot of success. He like I said, he might have the most talented roster in this division from the start. So it'll be really interesting to see what he does. What he's able to do with a roster that's built to win a little bit quicker than what he had with the Giants last cycle.
Yeah, and the team building aspect is probably going to be the most important here. Can he supplement all these young guys with, whether it be via trade, draft, free agency, to keep that edge, I think, throughout the whole cycle. So definitely going to be an interesting cycle for him, and it'll be good to see what he can do with the whole cycle and team building.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think he was a really solid addition in terms of his gameplay style, and we got to see a little bit of his roster building, the last couple seasons. But I'm looking forward to having him in the division and seeing what he can do with a roster that's ready to go.
Yep.
All right, so that wraps up our talk on the Bills. So we'll go to our final team in this AFC East reveal.
Yep, and our final team, the New York Jets, is going to go to the same owner as last year, and that is Austin. And Austin was actually probably one of the most successful owners last cycle. He had a 59-53 record, but he had 5 winning seasons, was 7-4.
Nope.
Cycle, able to
come on.
have 5 winning seasons is pretty impressive. So He's definitely going to be a force to reckon with in this division. And we'll have to see, though, how this team's rated. So, Bon, let's hear about the Jets.
Yeah, so the big news, obviously, Jamal Adams is listed at the top of the roster. He will not be there, but the Jets got 2 first-round picks for him and another safety. Oh shoot, I'm blanking on the starting safety from the Seahawks. I can't think of his name, but so they got a pretty good haul for him. But that immediately worsens this roster in the immediate term. Other than that, you've got Le'Veon Bell, who had a really terrible season last year, and his ratings kind of reflecting that. His speed. I don't know what his speed was last year, but he's down to an 87 speed, 90 acceleration. So that's going to be pretty tough. Even though Austin had a lot of success with him last year. C.J. Mosley and Avery Williamson, a couple of linebackers, Marcus May, free safety, at the top of the list. And then you've got Jamison Crowder, their only other offensive player at 80 overall or above, and Pierre Desir. So again, another decently strong defensive backfield. You've got Marcus May at 81 overall, Pierre Desir at an 80 overall, Brian Poole at 79 overall as part of that defensive backfield. And then with C.J. Mosley and Avery Williamson in the linebacking core, you've actually got some building blocks for a pretty good defense. The loss of Jamal Adams will hurt that quite a bit, but a decent defense. The offense is where this team's going to have to really improve strong. Again, Quinnen Williams, I forgot they drafted him last year. They have him listed as a defensive end, but I guess the Jets must be a 3-4 defense. But
Yep.
Again, another good young building block, Steve McClendon. So that defense is ready to roll. It's going to be a matter of building the offense back up. The ageless Frank Gore, I think in his 52nd season in the NFL or something like that, 79 overall. He's actually their third highest rated offensive player. He's got to be 42 or something now. How old is he?
I don't know. I feel like he's been around since I was born.
Yeah, it's insane. So yeah, a lot of work for Austin with the offense, but this defense is ready to go and should keep him, be able to keep the Jets competitive early on.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. You brought up Le'Veon Bell and him having been able to have success with him last year. And it's going to be interesting because one of the changes that Madden, has kind of touted is making receiving running backs a little bit more useful, letting them get into their patterns quicker, letting screens work better, that type of thing. And so that's where a player like Le'Veon Bell can really be used to his full potential. And you mentioned McCaffrey last year, and you traded him away. And part of the reason, and he got traded, I think, a second time, was he couldn't be used like he can in real life because you pass catching running backs aren't that great.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting if that change does happen, like Madden says it has. Le'Veon Bell is going to be a weapon despite the lower speed that he might be at now because of that. And Austin's shown that he can already have success with Bell, and that could even be taken to another level. And that could be the X factor for that offense, especially in this division where passing the ball might not be the best route for some of these teams. Being able to run is going to be key.
Yeah, and Austin builds his offense around the run game. He always has, and he's, like I said, last year he was really successful with it. You went through his record and his Super Bowl victory, right? He won. Did he win a Super Bowl or did he just appear in it?
He won one, lost one.
Okay, so 2 Super Bowl appearances, multiple playoff appearances. It was really him and Vin Moss kind of bouncing back and forth, and then Ross had a couple of years with the Dolphins, but him and Vin Moss kind of ran the AFC East, going back and forth, either winning the division or being in the wild card. So he's had success with this roster. I don't know. I mean, I think the roster might have been in a little bit better shape last year at the start, but not much. So he's already shown that he can build this roster up into a contender, and he can contend right away. Making the Super Bowl in the second season last year. So I fully expect him to be right at the top again, competing for the division, and again supplementing a really good defense to start with some offensive pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key for that offense is going to be keeping the offensive line up and improving the offensive line. I know the Jets kind of focused on that this offseason with some new pieces on the offensive line, but then really the wide receiver position. Because I'm not sure what they have there that will be there after 1 or 2 seasons. So,
Yeah, Jamison Crowder, more of a slot guy. They got Quincy Enunwa, who's a pretty solid guy. They've got the Madden god, Brashad Perriman, from God, whenever his rookie year when Forthy lit the world on fire with him. But they did draft Denzel Mims from Baylor, who is listed as I believe a 70 overall. 70 overall, decent speed. They got Braxton Berrios, your typical white slot guy that the Patriots have patented. So they've got some weapons on the offensive end. They've got some that Josh Doxson, who's been a disappointment. I believe he was a first round pick, but he's been pretty disappointing. Maybe a second chance in New York. That Josh Bellamy. So there's some weapons there for Sam Darnold, who this will be his third season. So there will be a decision coming up pretty quick about him and a 5th-year deal, a long-term deal from that, or if the Jets are going to move on, which I believe Austin did last year. Sam Darnold ended up in Arizona, I know, at one point. So not the greatest ratings for him. 88 throw power, only 73 overall. So that'll be something to look to within the first, up to the sim season, what the Jets do at quarterback and how they build this offense. Getting some playmakers and building up the offensive line a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely going to be an interesting division. I said earlier that I think the Bills are the best team from a roster standpoint. I think Austin coming in is going to be the most dangerous from the user standpoint based off of his record last year. So overall, those two bouncing out with you taking the Dolphins team with a lot of long-term potential. Obviously, the Patriots and the unknown with Double D. I think overall this division is definitely shaping up to be a very competitive one, both early and late in the cycle.
So let's transition. So that'll wrap up our talk about the Jets by themselves. You kind of started getting at it already. Let's transition to talk about the division as a whole. So you mentioned you think the Bills probably have the most ready, made to win roster from the start. With Captain Punishment taking them over, he didn't have a ton of success last year, but we talked about the issues with his team that he took over and the uphill climb that was. So, I'll obviously give my thoughts, but I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on, who you think is going to have the most success early on, and then who you think will have the most success throughout the cycle?
I think I'm going to go with Captain Punishment and the Bills to start having the most success. I think early on. I think Sam Darnold being rated worse than he was last year, and the dominant secondaries, I think that's really going to make a challenge for Austin early on. I could be completely off base there, but I want to say the Bills early on is my favorite. And I think that they're going to be the team that people are going to be chasing all cycle just because they're still so young. But I think later in the cycle, I think both the Dolphins and the Jets have the potential to be right there challenging the Bills in the back half of the cycle. Just because I know that, one, Austin is a great team builder and he'll get some good players in there. And two, that Dolphins team and you are set up to be really good with Tua after a couple of years of progression.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Bills are the team to beat early on. I think that roster's just built really well. It has probably the most depth. Although the Patriots, man, looking at this, like the ratings as a whole throughout the division, the Patriots have a lot of top end talent. They were rated really well by Madden, and I don't know in real life what that team's going to look like, with a shortened offseason and everything. But I think being able to throw Cam Newton in there on a really cheap 1-year deal, I think it's going to make them contenders. So I think the first year, it's really going to be the Bills and Patriots division. I don't expect anything out of me. And Austin, losing Jamal Adams hurts. And he's going to compete. I think he's going to be in that wild card hunt. So I think it's really going to be a 3-team division early on. And then again, my hope for me, I'm just looking to compete after the sim season, and which means I need to draft really well. But like you said, that Bills team is really set up for the long run. It's still really young. There's going to be some decisions to make about Josh Allen and his contract, and Stephon Diggs. I think he has 2 years left on his deal, so they're going to kind of come up at the same time, I believe. So there's going to be some decisions to make on some of this young talent and who to keep and who to let go. But Captain, if he's able to draft pretty well and maintain his cap, then I think he's set up well. Double D is a big unknown, and that's not a knock on him that we're not really talking about. We just don't know anything about him. So it could be that he runs the division. It could be that he's in the basement. It could be that he's in the middle somewhere and has a couple of good years and a couple of down years. It's just, the unknown is we just can't really say because none of us have played him and no one knows about his roster building. So I think that's really cool. It's fun to have that in the division, but in terms of making predictions, it's too much of an unknown to really be able to say what he's going to be able to do. And that Patriots roster is aging. There's going to be a lot of turnover in the first couple of years. The Patriots, I'm really thinking the last like 3 or 4 cycles, no one's really wanted them because of the whole Tom Brady thing and because it's consistently an aging roster. In real life, they're able to retool quickly, but it's a tough team in Madden to be able to keep competitive and keep around the salary cap with so many aging players and big contracts.
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right about that, about, the Double D being the unknown. And one other interesting thing here, and what puts you in a little bit of driver's seat here, and you kind of alluded to it, is you're the only team that's kind of set up for the cycle of QB.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Sam Darnold's not the long-term answer. I don't see Austin re-signing him. Cam Newton's only going to be able to be there for a season or two because he's going to regress pretty soon into the cycle. And then Josh Allen is either going to probably price himself out of Buffalo, or he's not going to perform and is going to be let go. So I have a hard time seeing him maybe sticking in Buffalo, whether he does really well or whether he does awful. I think you're the only team that is set up and good quarterback, and you're going to have a quarterback with a rookie deal for 5 seasons.
Yeah.
That's or 4 seasons, and then the 5th-year option if you so choose.
Yeah.
But that's going to be key from just like a cap standpoint as well. We really haven't talked about the salary cap in this division tonight, and having a QB on a rookie deal is for that many seasons is really going to help you with your team building and the cap, even after giving that huge deal off to Byron Jones.
Yeah, that's a good point, and we've talked about it in all the other division reels. It's impossible to know what Madden's going to do with the cap. We've talked about how they fudge the cap a little bit to make it easier for teams to manage because they don't have the rollover mechanisms that they do in real life, which a lot of teams utilize. So it's hard to know. I don't even know which teams would be in good cap shape versus bad cap shape in this division. I just don't know. With Tom Brady's cap number off and the Patriots only playing Cam, league minimum, they should be in pretty good shape, but they also gave a couple of big contracts to some offensive linemen in the offseason. Kind of the same with the Bills. They still have Josh Allen on a rookie contract, but then they acquire the contract of Stephon Diggs, which kind of offsets that. So, cap management always becomes, and that's one of the fun things about our league because we incorporate the sim seasons and we get deeper into these player development years than most leagues do. We get to that 6th and 7th year where you have to make decisions on these rookies and you sign a 6-year contract and you see the end of that 6-year contract when it's a $40 million salary. So that's always fun to track and see how guys manage the cap. And that usually is a good indicator of who's going to have long-term success. If you're able to manage it early on, kind of set yourself up to be able to max out that cap in the last couple of years of the cycle.
Yeah. That's for sure. And I mean, I think that the Bills, too, from a cap standpoint, that's going to be very important because you got Tre'Davious White, who I don't know if he just signed a long-term deal, but I know he's going to be up for one if he hasn't yet. Same with Poyer. If he wants to bring Micah Hyde back. And You mentioned Diggs. If he wants to do Allen long term, Evan Singletary. Like these are all guys, key guys that are going to need to have long term deals within the first couple seasons. So I think from a cap standpoint, the Bills are the ones that's going to be the most interesting to see because they're not going to be able to resign all these guys.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the fun and the hard part of having a lot of young, really good talent is you can't keep them all. So you end up picking and choosing and you just hope you choose the right guys to keep.
Yep.
And,
exactly.
Double D mentioned our contract re-signs. Even if you intend to keep a guy, they may, reject the contract offer and then you have to use a franchise tag or you don't have the ability to keep him. You try to get him in free agency where sometimes these salaries can skyrocket and it prices you out or you're keeping a guy for, $7 or $8 million more per year than you anticipated.
Yeah. And, it'll be interesting too. Certain positions generally become more important, or they become the most expensive in free agency or in trades. A few years ago, it was DBs.
Yep.
Last year, DBs kind of like I feel like they almost leveled out. They weren't like the premium that they had been in some previous cycles. So it'll be interesting if that continues. If it's a little bit more even across the board, we saw some big running backs go for
Yeah.
some big trades last year, and with Le'Veon Bell in this division, all the secondaries in this division, there's definitely some trade fodder out there if anyone in this division wants to kind of clean house and kind of accelerate the rebuild. There's some good talent in there that historically has been highly valued.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.